movie star, as is Ricky Nelson became a pretty good entertainer himself. Interesting guys. And I think Elvis spent a little time in Texas, as I recall. So everybody's past go through Texas somewhere or another, which is always good. So, hey, listen, thanks for, David, thank you for being here today and for helping us get a little group together. And let me just share with you, I'm on the way over to Nashua to give a little speech along with some of the folks who are announced candidates and then some of us who aren't. But you know, if I do decide to make this plunge again, I'd certainly appreciate your consideration. And what they'll hear us talk about today is the real positive view I've got about the future of this country. I know there's a little pessimism under the surface, both domestically and internationally, and I understand that. You know, when you think about 1 out of 10 of our citizens being either underemployed or unemployed, or a lot of folks just completely giving up looking for work, and you think about 1 out of 5 children in this country live in a family that's on food stamps, then we can do better than that. And you know, the president currently is, you know, he may be satisfied with 2% growth in this country. I'm not. I know we can do better. And as the governor of the 13th largest economy in the world, I realize Texas, if it were a standalone country, would be the 13th largest economy. I know that you can get this country back on track, and it's just a matter of having the tax policy and the regulatory policies in place that free Americans and, you know, free businesses like yours from overtaxation, overregulation. And one of my great concerns is this this Dodd-Frank regulations on small community banks. I don't know where you go to borrow the money to keep your business going, but these small community banks are the real lifeblood of small communities. You know, well, over half of the loans that are given to small businesses come out of these small banks and these small community banks, and this Dodd-Frank is just, I mean, it's destroying them. And so, really freeing up from, you know, over taxation, over regulation, and we know how to get this country back on track. I happen to think it's inextricably intertwined with energy policy and North American energy. You think about Canada, the United States, Mexico, have more known reserves fossil fuels than Russia and Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's this fascinating amount of energy that is controlled by our friends. I'd rather buy our energy or rely upon energy from the Canadians or the Mexicans than Venezuela or some of these Middle Eastern countries that don't have our best interest in mind. So I was really disappointed and frustrated when the president vetoed the XL pipeline, because not only would it have created an extraordinary amount of jobs, and I'm not talking about just the jobs that the Teamsters unions and the other working men and women in this country could have enjoyed by building the pipeline, but also by the ancillary businesses that get created, the jobs that get created when you spin off with that supply of energy. We know that as you find more and more sources of domestic and North American energy, you can drive down the cost of power. And as you drive down the cost of power, and I'm talking about the cost of electricity, you couple that with reducing corporate tax rates, and every economist, every accountant will tell us, you lower the corporate tax rate. We got the highest corporate tax rate in the Western world now. You lower that corporate tax rate, and you will see a rise in wages. I mean, that is a fact that's not disputable. Any accountants understands that. And we can not only create a great boom in wages, but we can also expand substantially the amount of people that are going to be working in this country. You'll bring manufacturing back on shore. And I think the future of this country is inextricably intertwined, as I said, with North American energy, lowering corporate tax rates, and expanding the manufacturing base in this country. I think the greatest years in this country are ahead of us. Your grandson, your son, they will enjoy substantially more opportunities with that environment that we can create here. And you know, the same can be said about internationally, that there's a little pessimism out across the country and around the world. When we turn on our TV, we open up a newspaper, we flip on a radio, or we pull out our device, and we see stories about individuals being led down to the beach in Libya and beheaded. We see this ISIS on a march across the Middle East. We see a Jordanian pilot burned alive in front of us on TV. And we get, I think as late as this morning, an individual who's going to come back into this country to do jihad against Americans. I mean, that was, literally on the front page of the paper today. And people start going, you know, wait a minute, this isn't halfway around the world, this is right here back home. That's right. And we become concerned and a bit pessimistic about America's leadership, America's influence and goals in the world. Well, I'm just as optimistic about that in the future and the changes that can occur. We're just a few good changes and a leadership change at the top from the best days of the world being in front of us. Ronald Reagan in the early 80s understood that if America was strong, the world was safer. And you think about, you know, part of that pessimism is what we see economically, part of that pessimism is what we see going on around the world. And I will, you know, hearken back to the late 1970s, and America was in somewhat the same shape. We had boycotted the Olympics. We had embargoed our wheat going into Moscow. We had seen our rescue effort fail to save the hostages or to rescue the hostages in Iran. Interest rates were through the roof. I mean, the economy was flat of its back. And I mean, there was real concern. There was real pessimism in this country. And you fast forward 10 years to 1989, we saw the Berlin Wall fall. And we saw the Berlin Wall fall because America had become stronger and our military had the ability to project across the globe. And I'll suggest to you the same thing can happen again, if not even substantially quicker than that. You put policies into place that allow this country to grow economically. And I will suggest to you that can happen in a hurry. With a manufacturing boom like we've never seen in this country before. And jobs, and good paying jobs will be the result of that. And then those resources that come in and allow us to build our military back. We have the smallest army that we've had since 1940. The Air Force only has one fighter in production today, the F-35. I mean, our Marine Corps and our Navy are not as prepared as they could be and should be. But we can do that quickly. I mean, the renaissance that occurred in America back through the 80s that resulted in the fall of Soviet communism, that same result can occur with the right kind of leadership and the focus on getting this country back to work and building our military back up and projecting American interest across the world. As we think about what's happened in Libya, in Egypt, we see ISIS, and I will suggest to you ISIS could have been stopped in Syria by supplying support and weapons to those Syrian rebels, and a byproduct of that also would have been getting rid of Assad at that particular point in time, but our president said, no, it's not what I want. I'm not going there. Then as they moved out of Syria into Iraq, that northern region of Iraq, that Kurdistan area where the Peshmerga fighters, had we delivered lethal weaponry to them, they're fighting for their hometown, they're fighting for their families. And these are extraordinary, this is an extraordinary fighting force. They would have stopped ISIS. But again, our president said no. And then we see ISIS today controlling a block of land bigger than the United Kingdom because the United States stepped back, just as we did in Libya and in Egypt. And while all of that was going on,
what do we do now?
There was an individual watching that. There was an individual watching that by the name of Vladimir Putin. And he realized that he realized that annexation of Crimea probably wasn't going to be a problem. That the European Union, and because of the United States' position of standing back, was going to allow him to go into Ukraine. And so that's where we find ourselves. But I'll suggest to you again, with the right leadership, with the right economy, this country not only will see the best days it's ever had before, the world will be safer. And the way you deal with it at this particular juncture is obviously by creating a coalition with the Saudis, with the Jordanians, with the Turks. And I'll suggest, all of those individuals, along with the U.S. and Israel in that part of the world, can in fact affect. And the U.S. just has to. We must re-engage. I mean, the idea that we can just kind of step back into the boundaries of the United States and somehow or another they're going to leave us alone. The headline, the story on the front page of the paper today ought to be, and you know what your common sense tells you, they're not going to leave us alone. They hate us. They're going to come attack us. They're going to come jihad until we have the ability to stop them. And I would preferably stop them there than here.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you all for coming out and being with us today. David, thank you again. Thanks for opening up your business. And Mary Linda, thank you for coming and blessing us with your presence again. So we got time to open up for questions. I'll attempt to answer.
Governor, if you become president, will you seal the borders and stop this Mickey Mousing with our visas, that people are overstaying their visas and just never leaving the country? Will you control who comes into our country?
Well, there's not anyone who has any more experience in dealing with the border than I do, and in real time. The Texas-Mexico border has been a challenge for a substantial amount of time. Last year, you saw the response that I had for the president after I met with him in Dallas, and it became abundantly clear that he was not going to do his constitutional duty. I told him, I said, Mr. President, if you don't secure the border, Texas will. And that's when we deployed our National Guard to the border. We already had our law enforcement, our Texas Rangers, Department of Public Safety, our Parks and Wildlife individuals were literally in the river in our boats. And the result of that was there was a 74% decrease in the number of apprehensions in that southern region of the border. And here's one of the interesting things. This is, the president says we put more money into Border Patrol than there's ever been before. We've added all of these Border Patrol agents. That is correct. But they got them in the wrong place, and they got them in the wrong position. The border with Mexico and the United States is 1,800 miles. 600 miles from Tijuana to El Paso. From El Paso to Brownsville is 1,200 miles, approximately. 54% of all the apprehensions that occurred last year were in a 150-mile stretch of the southern border, basically Brownsville and 150 miles back up the Rio. Approximately 150 miles. And over 50% of the apprehensions. So your common sense tells you that's where you go put your resources, but that's not what they've done. I mean, the resources are spread out in different places. When I met with the president, it was really interesting, and he was gracious to meet with me, and I appreciate his agreeing to do that. I tried to get him to go to the border to see the challenge, and he was busy. I tell people, they say he was on an important mission to raise money for Democrats in Dallas, and he couldn't run down to the border. In seriousness, he needed to see it so he could understand the challenge. And I shared with him that the Border Patrol was back in what I refer to as an apprehension mode, 40 or 50 miles back away from the actual border. And he didn't realize that. He looked over to Valerie Jarrett and said, "Is that right, Valerie?" And I said, "Mr. President, that's correct. The Border Patrol, in too many instances, is back away from the border and not in a force multiplier presence where people see them and know that they're going to be apprehended or being stopped." To deal with the border, you have to have three things. You have to have personnel. You have to have those personnel in the right places. You have to have strategic fencing. And by and large, the strategic fencing is in place. It's in metropolitan areas and the areas where the population. And the third thing, and I will suggest the most important and the one that's missing, are the aviation assets.
Yeah.
We have the ability to look down 24/7 from Tijuana all the way to Brownsville, and that whole 1,800 miles. You know, individuals who are wanting to penetrate to, whether it's for an illegal activity of smuggling drugs or weapons, or individuals. They don't know where or when those are going to come by, so it has a really powerful effect. But the most powerful effect that it has is when they see activities on that border, and you have quick response teams that can be there very quickly to deal with whatever that activity may be, whether it's gun smuggling, whether it's drug smuggling, whether it's human smuggling, and you can deal with that very quickly. And at that particular point in time, the border can be secured. I full well know that the border can be secured. And that's the way you deal with this. If you don't secure the border first, all this other conversation about immigration, about this or that, really doesn't matter, because everyone still knows the border's porous. And we've been deporting people and sending people back for years. And I tell people, I said, sometimes they beat the bus back. And you know, that is a bit of a stretch, but you get my drift here, is that when you have a border that has historically been as porous as the United States-Mexico border, you don't have national security. And I think we all saw a story, and I haven't confirmed this, and I'm trying to confirm it, that a terrorist base is in operation within 8 miles off of the Texas-Mexican border.
That's pretty scary.
If that's the case, then we really have to get serious about the security of our border. We really have to get serious about the terrorist threat to this country.
Governor, one place where the president has engaged internationally is Iran. You oppose this. It's not really a deal yet. It's a framework of a deal on nukes. What should Congress do in the next year and a half before there's a new president if this deal continues to go through?
Let me back up, and I think the American people really have a role to play in this as well. It's the American people who really understand what we are dealing with here, who we're dealing with, and to remind them that Iran is the country that was responsible for the death of our Marines in Beirut.
Yes.
They're responsible for the weapons that were supplied to Iraq that killed our soldiers. They are responsible today for exporting terrorism to Hamas, to Hezbollah. And the question needs to be asked, should we even be in negotiation with a country like Iran at all? I think not. I think we had them in a very uncomfortable position with the sanctions. I think had you even tightened the sanctions up, one of two things were certainly real possibilities: either revolution in that country because the people are just absolutely fed up with the leadership there, or the leadership coming to the table and saying, okay, we're ready to get real with you, and to allow you to come in and to look at what we're doing, so that this effort to get nuclear power truly is just that. I will suggest to you it's only about, and always has been about,
they don't need
getting
power,
a nuclear weapon.
They don't need it. They have plenty of oil.
They're sitting on
need it.
more energy than practically any country in the world. And I think that's where the American people really have to engage here, and to be blunt and straightforward with the president, say, Mr. President, we don't want this. You know, go build your legacy on something else, but not on this. So Congress should demand that they have an up or down vote, and that they're kept in the loop. There's some transparency going on. I mean, the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the members of in the Senate who are in leadership positions on the committees that deal with this, they at a minimum should be kept in the loop on this and be engaged in this process. It's too important to our country. It's too important to the Middle East. So I think this president is making a tremendous mistake because he's gone into these negotiations. Iran's been able to continue to develop the byproducts of those centrifuges for 2 years now. So I think there's some great concern not just across the board in America, but obviously in the Middle East, because we know what the result of this is going to be. You allow the Iranians to go forward in the quest to get this nuclear capability, you're guaranteeing a Sunni bomb. The Saudis, the other Gulf states are not going to stand by and allow Iran to be the only place that has a nuclear weapon. At that particular point in time, you make the entire region substantially more dangerous.
Governor?
You mentioned the Peshmerga and the Kurds. Would you support giving them more funding than they're currently receiving right now?
Yeah, I would deliver not just funding. I would deliver the lethal weaponry to the Peshmerga. And we should have done it months ago. Yes, sir.
Governor, the issue of wealth and income inequality seem to be a topic that is being embraced also by Republicans. Do you agree that that's an issue, and what views do you have on resolving it?
Yeah. Well, I agree that we ought to make every opportunity for people that want to work to be able to have a job and have a good job. And the way you do that is by, as I talked about earlier, lowering the corporate tax rate so that you'll see, that's an immediate effect that can happen and I don't care whether you're a blue collar worker or a union member, wherever you may be, you haven't seen those wages increase, and one of the reasons is because of this high corporate tax rate that we put in place. My home state's a great, there's a model here, and this isn't just a small place in the world where it's been manipulated. This is the 13th largest economy in the world. They created 1.5 million jobs from 07 through 14 during a time that America went through the worst recession that it's been through since the Great Depression. And there was 1.5 million jobs created during that period of time. And the critic would say, well, it's just oil and gas. No, it's not. This is a very diverse. Texas became the #1 high-tech exporting state in the nation in early 2014. It's a very diverse economy, and it's because tax policy, regulatory policies, legal policies, and a skilled workforce, which basically are accountable public school policies, those are the 4 things you put into place. And so income inequality, I will suggest to you, can be substantially ameliorated by allowing the economy to grow. We've got a participation rate in the workforce today as low as it's been since 1978. That's unacceptable. We got too many people out of work. We got too many people underemployed, or we got too many people just giving up looking for work at all. And the way you get them back, I think, very clearly, is connected to our energy policy, developing North American energy, drive down the cost of power, lower the corporate tax rate, and expand manufacturing like we've never seen before. That's how you do this. This isn't rocket science. It's going to take the will of the President of the United States, who philosophically believes that the American people will respond to that. I've seen the 2nd most popular state in the nation over the last 14 years respond to that, and respond in a very powerful way.
Governor, it seems like in the past week, many of the potential candidates have begun the kind of attack games that you see in an election. You've got former governors and current governors criticizing senators for their lack of executive experience. You have some personal attacks, Chris Christie accusing Jeb Bush of not being specific enough in his foreign policy. You've been through this before. How do you prevent the kind of infighting that leaves a candidate so bloody and damaged that they're in trouble?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a negative criticism to point out someone's got executive experience. I do happen to think, and I'm not, listen, Ted and Rand and Marco are not only friends, when we work together and we've come to admire each other. These are really incredibly bright, capable individuals who, I might add, all 3 of them give an amazing speech. They get me up, standing up and pumping the air. These are really capable. But the question for America is going to be, after 8 years of a young, inexperienced United States Senator who gave a great speech, is that what Americans are going to be looking for, or are they going to be more interested in someone who has substantial executive experience? I give the example, and this is anecdotal, but I'll share it with you. When Ebola came onto the shores of this country, it happened to come into my state. When I got the phone call that Mr. Duncan was in fact infected with Ebola, I knew exactly who I wanted to head up our effort. I knew the individual that I wanted to be the face of competence for not just Texas, but for Americans, because the entire country was looking at us, how we were going to handle this. The hospital had some errors made, and whoever stood up and said, "We've got this," I wanted them to give great confidence that they had the competence to deal with this. And that was Dr. Bradshaw. This was a physician who was an extraordinary background, had worked at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, had helped develop the foundation over Texas A&M University to manufacture vaccines that were going to be used for pandemic events around the world. I mean, this was a person who had extraordinary experience, and I knew who I wanted to have to be the number 2, Dr. David Lakey, an infectious disease expert who was the head of our health services agencies. And when they stepped in front of the cameras, they exuded competence, and they gave Americans confidence. The president, on the other hand, and I will suggest to you, because he's not had executive experience before, even the 5 years that he'd been president, he had not exhibited that executive experience. And he finally, when he got around to naming someone, Ron Klein, who was a former spokesperson for the Vice President Al Gore. And I'm not sure didn't give me a lot of confidence, let me put it that way. And I think that's the same thing that most Americans felt, that this was just another political spokesperson that was up talking about something, frankly, that they didn't know anything about. You saw the team that I put together come up with protocol that the CDC actually were using, so that when nurses and technicians went into the rooms with Ebola patients, that they were properly covered and they were using the proper protocol. And we dealt with that issue, and now, you know, Americans have basically forgotten it. We've gone on to something else because it was competently taken care of. I think executive experience is incredibly important to managing this country as we go forward. Choosing men and women to go into cabinet positions, of being able to daily get up and manage this extraordinary country. And I don't think it's something that you just, somebody's not going to give you a book and say, here's how you do it. It comes with experience, and I think that executive experience is extraordinarily important.
Sure, we get to run and take some pictures.